Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 189 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days for just $1, and if you have a staff of 2 or more, you want to sign up as a group, we have a special membership offer for you, up to 50% off, depending on how many people you got. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. I'm your host, Anthony Rana, and the show notes are located at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Want to get in touch with me, shoot me an email to StrengthCoachPodcast@gmail.com. All right, today on the Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about Charlie Weingroff's article, The Concept of the Lowest System Load, how technology is getting more involved in the gym, Kevin Carr's article, Frontal Plane and Cross-Lateral Movement, and more. That and much more coming up on the Coach's Corner in a little while. Aaron McCaw from Perform Better joins us to talk about the huge summer sale. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Alan Cosgrov is on to talk about reinventing yourself. For the Functional Movement System segment, Brett Jones is on to finish his 2-part series on Indian clubs. Part 2 is on the application of the clubs. We have a special segment that we're starting with Allistair McCaw from the McCaw Method. Today he starts his series on the 7 keys to being a great coach. That's the name of his book. Today he talks about standards. For the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach, I have Marco Sanchez from Movement as Medicine and Mike Boyle, Strength and Conditioning. Marco's on to talk about how movement as medicine works inside the confines of MBSC and their unique relationship. New things happening with what they're doing. Working cervical rotation. He'll talk about some exercises and an assessment. The Stability WOD series. Great stuff there, especially if you work with the FMS. His take on the industry and so much more. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Coach, how you doing?
I am doing great, Anthony. How are you?
Doing great, hanging in there. StrengthCoach.com. Let's talk about a couple of articles. You really liked an article that Charlie Weingroff did called Lowest System Load, the concept of lowest system load. And it was really kind of, for the most part, talking about how you can still get stronger with kettlebells and why he likes kettlebells. I felt like you liked it because I think it's a similar concept to why you like single leg squats. And, how can we get super strong without really, what's that lowest system load? What's the lowest cost on our body? Can you just kind of go over why you like this article and expand on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back, I think Gray first talked about it as minimum effective dose. What's like he used the analogy of like, if you get a headache, they tell you to take 2 aspirin, not to take a bottle. And I think in strength and conditioning, I think some people think maximum effective dose, like what's the most weight I can do this exercise with? And that in theory that makes it better. That, if you squat 500, that's way better than squatting 400. And in a really simplistic world, that's true. But as you said, when you start looking in the world of unilateral training, or even where the load is, we found for our one-leg squats, when we double kettlebell load, like that video of Devin's guy that we put up on the site, that load being closer to the center of mass and in a different leverage position makes that exercise much harder. So you get more difficulty with less weight. And I just like the fact that more people are saying it, that we're looking at this idea of it's not just about how much weight you can get on the bar. And I think so much of what we fight against, just in general in strength and conditioning, is this: how much weight can you do it with? And this, the idea that, bigger loads, more hormonal effect. People, the powerlifting crowd, I always think loves to spend a lot of time justifying their existence in strength and conditioning these days. And so they're constantly trying to make, they create these rationales for why it has to be almost the opposite, highest possible load as opposed to lowest possible load. But your common sense seems, or at least to me, tells you the opposite. I said, you were in my talk in Providence, and I said, if I could find a way to do an exercise and that a feather was enough load, I'd be fine with it, as long as it was achieving the objective that I wanted it to achieve.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We're seeing more coaches talk about this. We had Brian Mann on here talk about velocity-based training and about speed, and Greg Rose was talking about power at the Perform Better Summit, and he talked about 3 ways that you can increase muscle fiber density and increase power, which was lift a heavier load, lift the load faster, or with intensity, like a really super high intensity. And, just kind of talking about how basically lifting a heavy load, it's good, but still there are a lot more. And you've always talked about risk reward. There's certainly more risk to lifting that heavier load. So the fact that, we can throw some medicine balls around as fast as we can and do things like the Kaiser, with the Kaiser that's allowed us to move weight safely. I think you're right. We're seeing a lot more of this message out there.
Yes, and that's why I said, even I listened to the day of the Perform Better Seminar. I went and listened to Dan Baker talk about velocity-based training, and he was basically saying the same thing. He was actually, and I had talked about this years ago with Craig Friedman when we first started playing with the Kaiser, in terms of at what point do we terminate the set? Do we look at 80% of peak power as being the point where you terminate the set and say, okay, I'm now moving the load too slow, therefore it's not benefiting me anymore, and that was one of the things that Dan Baker was talking about, was just looking and saying, okay, when your speed decreases by 20%, stop. So there's less kind of grinding reps, then there's more reps at a certain sort of desirable rate of speed. I guess my thing is just that I want people to think, that's me. I mean, I just want people to think. I want people to look at this process and say, we talked, the slide was in, what if the way we always did it was wrong? Is there a better way? And I like the fact, because especially with Charlie, obviously I love Charlie anyway, but Charlie is a powerlifter. That's his background. If we were going to classify him, we'd say Charlie's a powerlifter. But here's a guy who we know is a powerlifter, and so he likes picking everything up as much as anybody. It's his sport. Still saying there's lots of ways to skin this cat. And I think, obviously, he goes to work at Canada Basketball. He can't apply his powerlifting philosophy that has been so great for him to develop, crazy strength to those guys, at least not in a very direct way. And then so he's got to figure out an indirect way to effectively do the same thing. And it's great. I mean, it was just one of those, one of the things I'm trying to do sort of with the site, with strengthcoach.com, is to be kind of a better curator. As I read more stuff, I think this would be really good for the site. We just posted Kevin Carr's stuff about frontal and transverse plane on the site. There's all these things that when I think, wow, I need everybody to read this, then I want to make sure we get those things up on the site.
Absolutely. And I think, we're going to talk about Kevin's article in a couple minutes, but one thing, Coach, I think the dilemma here becomes, okay, you're like, you just said, when we decrease the load, when the speed decreases 20%, okay, now it's too heavy. But now we have to understand that, okay, maybe we do need some of this technology, a little bit more technology to figure out how do we know that we're doing that. So I think that's where the slippery slope is with, when do we get into technology? And we look at somebody like Dan Baker, who's been doing this, I think, just as long as you have, and not to say that you're old, but to say that, a lot of times, and you're not like this, but a lot of times a lot of older coaches will kind of say, that's just the way we don't need that. We've done it this way. This is the way. This is fine. But I think it just shows us like that sometimes a lot of the technology, there is a lot of good about this technology, and that we're going to have to adapt to it at some point.
I think there's no question in the velocity-based technology, be it Tendo or Push, or I forget the one. Brian is working with a different one. There's kind of 3 different technology groups out there. GymAware, maybe. Is it GymAware that Brian's working with? Because I know Dan and Brian are sort of with different products. I don't know which product is the best, but that was one of the reasons I went to listen to Dan, because I realized that we do need, this to me, from a training standpoint, is that next frontier where you start looking and saying, okay, what do we need? And I think this velocity-based training idea is obviously something that we need. I look at it, I think we're doing it. But even, Brian, if you listen to him on the podcast 2 episodes ago, he talked about the fact that they weren't seeing the correlation of Olympic lifting to vertical jump. But he said in the talk, and very honestly, that he felt like the reason they weren't is because they weren't Olympic lifting well. Again, they were muscling weights. It was ugly. It wasn't that, because I was saying to somebody, I had one of my Olympic team girls, Casey Bellamy, who's literally, she's getting close to a foot increase in vertical jump. She got from, actually there's a foot now, it's 19 to 29. I posted a video of her on my Instagram the other day doing a 29.5 inch vertical jump. 7 years ago, at the age of 20, she had a 19 inch vertical jump. So I know that these things do in fact correlate when they're done well. But I do think when you get into like your squatting exercises and your squatting patterns and some other things, that you do need to find a way to quantify that. What's the desirable velocity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the technology is getting cheaper. So, and it's funny, I was at Frank Dolan's the other day and we were kind of going over some software, almost like client management software it's getting so amazing. And Frank and I have been talking about it for a long time, years, about how to connect with certain clients and leaving money on the table. For example, somebody comes in and wants a program, and can we really work with that program, that person, if they have a home gym or they don't want to become a member or they don't have the time, et cetera, and the technology's getting so amazing. And I think it's kind of all coming together. Like right now, the only problem is that we've talked about, Frank and I, is that, you need 17 different apps. We need this super software that's going to kind of do our scheduling and then do our, look at all of our, Tendo information and tell us what people are eating. And I think it's going there anyway. But we even got into discussion about Pokemon, because what Frank was talking about was, look at Pokemon, what they can do with Pokemon. Can we now put you in that room with somebody in their gym going over, eventually, and where is this whole business going? That's for another day. But it's just really interesting. I think, it really is one of those, we're going to have to join. And again, the prices are coming down, but we're going to have to get more technologically advanced within the gyms to really keep up.
I had breakfast with Dan Baker and one of the guys from Push, and that was one of the things that I said was that, I don't like, I was working with this other company called Athos, which is doing EMG that they've put into shorts and shirts. But the problem is, you're right, it's the apps. Suddenly, I'm using an older iPhone 5. I don't have the right iOS. I can't download the app. And so you get into these huge technology things that even for somebody like me, who you might look at and say, people would perceive me as a relatively technologically savvy strength coach. Yet at the same time, I would look at it and say I struggle with the technology, because with Push, you've got to download the app, then you've got to connect it. It's almost like you need a freaking 15-year-old. I need Michaela to be in charge of technology for me, because everything to her is easy with apps. And with me, I'm just getting comfortable with the computer. And now they're not making it for computer. It's all on your phone. So now I got to go out and get a new phone. And the guy's answer was, yeah, just go and buy a cheap iPod, buy an iPod Touch, and you can run everything off that. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, okay, now it's $299 for the Push unit. And now it's another $299 to get an iPod. All of a sudden I'm $600 into this technology for one person. And so I think that's part of what the technology people have to figure out on the other end is, can I make this thing more self-contained? Like, our My Zone system is great because it goes with TV right in the weight room. I don't have to worry about having my phone. That's one of the things we were talking about is I don't like the idea of athletes having their phone in the weight room, because I know how distracted they are by their phones. But the Athos people were saying, no, it's actually fine. The kids have been really good with it. So I think there's a lot of hurdles that we still got to jump when we start talking about the tech movement.
Absolutely. It's funny because that you say that about Michaela, being your tech advisor. Frank was saying when I went down there last week about how quick it's like he doesn't even have to explain to all his teenagers of anything. He just says, "Hey, this is our new app, blah blah blah," and they give him like very minimal instructions. They are all over it. So it's really interesting that but also going back to the phones in the gym. Look, unfortunately, we're gonna have to get over that because these people have them 24/7, and that's the way it is. So I get what you're saying too. I hate them in the gym. It's so annoying to see somebody go over and check their phone.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna say to a mom who's like, "Oh, my kid's with the babysitter, and I want to make sure."
Yeah, I don't mind that. I just don't want everybody dragging their phone around with them because suddenly they need it for the app that we're using. But I also realize that they're looking at Instagram and they're snapping selfies. I mean, my daughter, I would say to somebody, things are changing. My daughter can't get out of the house without a GPS, but she can get anywhere in the friggin' world. Like I could literally send her to China tomorrow and she'd be like, okay, put it in my GPS. I know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
So, the way the world is changing, even like I said, for some people might look at, me and say, you're up on the internet, you've got websites, you've got this, you've got that. I'm like, I'm not even close to where the kids are right now in terms of, my daughter, every time we do something, just download the app, download the app for that restaurant. Or, we're going on a flight. Well, download Flight Tracker, go to United.com, download their app. And I'm like, I don't want all these apps on my phone. But, you know what I mean? But that's like everything for them is about the app now. So it is. It's just interesting to sort of they talk about time marches on, and time is freaking sprinting on. It's not marching.
Yeah.
It's sprinting by us old folks.
Coach, I want to ask you about Kevin's article. It's funny. Frontal plane and cross lateral movement. Great article. Like a quick read from Kevin, just kind of talking about adding frontal plane and cross lateral movement to programs, and he was quoting Carla Hannaford for a book she wrote, Smart Moves, and how important some of this stuff is, and the crawling, etc. But it's kind of funny. It seems like all this new stuff we always just want to throw in the warm-up, which I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying there's so much of it. Because you've been doing some of this stuff for so long, it's not really new, but has it changed? And if some of this stuff, has it really changed your warm-up around? And my other question to jump on that is, with movement as medicine, it's funny, we have Marco Sanchez on the podcast today. Marco is the third member of Movement as Medicine, so we're completing the trifecta with the podcast interviews today. But with these guys in there, and they're always learning different stuff, and they're a different company within the company. How do you kind of manage all of that within MBSC? But let's go back to the first question would be just, talk to us about adding some of this stuff to the warm-up and deciding and figuring out what's good.
Well, I think it has changed our warm-up a little because it's interesting. And I always talk about everything being so population-specific. I do not the cocky people tend to not have great wrists. So we have tended not to crawl. And yet there seems to be slightly more justification, like, hey, we really need to put some crawling stuff back in. So we found we're doing a lot of crawling with our adults, a lot of crawling with our non-hockey population. But I still don't have a lot of crawling going on with the hockey crowd because they tend to not like it. It's one of those things. You're taking a lot of whacks on the wrist, and it's just not comfortable. So, yes, I think it's made some changes. No, it hasn't changed as much of what I'm doing, but I would look and say the Phillip Beach and Hartman stuff has really changed what we do on day two. Anna would be horrified because we've bastardized it so much because we're using it as warm-up, and she wanted it to be cool down. But Anna, we're getting it in anyway, so we're doing something. We're in the something is better than nothing. We're right now at the Mark Verstegen eat pizza for breakfast if all you can eat is pizza stage in core performance. But it's so. Yes, there are changes. No, they're not major.
Cool. What about this idea? What about having Marco and Kevin in the facility and Movement as Medicine? These guys are always kind of coming up with stuff. I know they do a lot of FRC stuff. They're always coming up with different things. How's that dynamic work within MBSC?
I think they've been very good and kind of very respectful of what we're doing. So some of it has worked its way into our adult programming. Some of it is, in the programming that they're doing. Some of it is allowing them to do a better job with some of our injured clients. I don't know if directly, again, I think some little pieces slowly work their way into the program. So you'd see a little bit more of the Spina stuff, the cars, controlled articular rotations and things like that, kind of getting thrown in the warm-up. And generally for me, if I don't find it to be way off the beaten path, I let it go and see, okay, will this be sticky? Is it stuff that's going to hang around, or is it something that we're going to do on a temporary basis and is going to kind of go away? So I think it's probably, in a lot of ways, a little bit of both.
All right, good stuff, Coach. I will let you go on that note, and we will talk to you next time. All
right, Anthony, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Make sure if you're not a strengthcoach.com member that you get on and take a look at that site. $1 for 3 days, right? I know you run the ad, but I got to keep promoting. People are missing the boat by not getting on there.
Absolutely. Discussions on the forum, awesome. All right, now it's time for the Ask the Equipment Experts with Perform Better, and now we do have the lovely and talented Erin McCaw on. Took a break last time. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. I love that you called Rob that, by the way. He didn't know what to do with himself.
Yeah, he was a little flustered. So,
I call him that every day now.
But I will ask, I kind of had to separate you guys up in Providence at the last Perform Better Summit because you guys are still going at it over the Schwinn, the bike times, posting the bike times that we're waiting for on strengthcoach.com. So,
We will. Right. Once I stop working, he works out twice a day, so he's all over it.
He looks good, too. He does look good.
He does.
Talk to us. Every year, really, we talk about this as really probably the biggest sale that you have. I'm not sure if it is, but, it's pretty big because you kind of, the new catalogs come and you're about to start working on that. And then, this thing goes until September 30th. It's the start of the big summer sale. Give us the lowdown on what's happening.
Well, you were 100% correct when you said that it is the biggest sale of the year. So we run it for 2 months. Luckily, our manufacturers, some of them that are involved in here, actually drop our prices for those 2 months. So it helps us lower the prices. But you're exactly right. We try and lower everything. There's some items that we say save up to 40%. But there's actually some items that are a little bit more than 40%. But what it is, we take our top sellers, and for those 2 months, we really just try and give the lowest prices possible and sell. But what it is, we have everything. If you look through it, super bands, mini bands, cook bands, pretty much all our tubing is on sale. Our foam plyo boxes, that's always a big hit. We have our PV Extreme weight vests, our foam rollers, tiger tails, all sorts of medicine balls. So this is also the time where if you're doing a facility, and we went back and looked at the numbers, and it is a huge time for people that are doing a new facility because we have some bigger equipment on there, such as our half racks. We have our adjustable benches on sale, dumbbells, bumper plates, urethane plates, hex bars. So all sorts of things that we really drop the prices on for this time being. But there's also some things that are on sale this year that haven't been in the summer sale before, so that's pretty cool. I know last year we had the TRX suspension trainer. They actually came back this year and wanted to get back on the sale, so we were able to include the RIP trainer in that as well. And we also have ultimate sandbags, and we have a brand new sandbag rack, which is, a lot of people don't know that that's new, but we do have a rack that now holds sandbags. We were getting a lot of questions about that, and that's something where I could probably talk about a different time. But there are some, like I said, new items that haven't been on here before. We have our Victory rack on there, assault bikes, things like that. we're excited. I love the summer sale. The only problem is we call it the end of summer sale, and I feel like summer's kind of just beginning, even though everyone's saying that it's almost over, which is sad. But although it says end of summer sale, don't let it fool you, because it actually goes till the end of September.
Yeah, and it's true. It is. It's so early. You're like, no, wait a minute, it just started. It really starts. I mean, I guess people aren't getting the catalogs yet for probably another week as we record this. But as we're talking, this is already online. Everybody can go online and start ordering that stuff too, right?
Correct. Yeah, we did change our website. So over the weekend, it reflected the sale prices. I know we list that it starts August 1st, but for those people, since August 1st is on a Monday, we figured we'd be nice and kind of started a week early just to give people the benefit of the doubt and get it going.
Very cool. And you only have, I just saw you 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, in Providence at the Perform Better Functional Training Summit. You only have one more to go for now, coming up in Long Beach, right?
Yeah, we have our Long Beach one. I was just talking to someone today. I can't even believe that we have 3 down already. But yeah, Long Beach is the last one. I feel like we do so much work to put these together, and it's been so much fun, and we have a blast going to them, that when we look back, I can't even believe that 3 are finished already and we only have Long Beach left. But Long Beach so far, I was checking it out, looking good as far as number-wise, and I know there's a lot of people that gave me a heads up that they were attending, so I'm excited to see a lot of my West Coast friends that I haven't seen in, well, probably a couple months.
All right. Very cool, E. Well, enjoy that trip out there, because I know when you come back, it starts the new catalog, and so we're going to have to make sure we contact you ahead of time for some of the interviews. So, E, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, this is Alan Cosgrov from ResultsFitnessUniversity.com, and this is the Business of Fitness segment here on the Strength Coach Podcast. So, the strategy for this month is about reinventing yourself. Change and growth. Don't be afraid of change. We just sent our whole team to Josh Henkin's excellent DBRT certification. It's a lot of great stuff Josh is doing with his whole team on movement, and it's game-changing stuff. I advise everybody to listen to that and go learn from Josh, but this is not an ad for Josh's product. This is the idea that you can't be afraid of change, right? There's always a fear when we go to seminars and we add things, and some of the younger listeners don't realize that the TRX wasn't around prior to 2004, right? So if you were open before that, you had to change your programming when the TRX arrived. Kettlebells were not freely available before that either. You had to change your programming when the kettlebell arrived on the scene. And I would say the DBRT and the sandbags or something new that you have to evolve and add into your programming to improve it. So don't be afraid of change. And even with our current business, we're constantly making changes and trying new things and taking new risks that usually pay off, but not always, right? We did some promotions that just I don't teach because they didn't work out. They're absolute disasters. And some that I teach here on the Strength Coach podcast that are, really working. So the whole idea, and I've said this before, that when you're listening to us at Results Fitness University, we have been there, done that, and are still doing it today. Some of our marketing and some of our operations are different. I used to do one-on-one training by sessions. It's an outdated method of doing business now. Everything now should be memberships and small groups. Not everything. The bulk of your business should be memberships and small groups. And being a business owner takes this attitude that you have to be uncomfortable when things aren't changing. It's risky owning a business, right? And if you don't move fast, make decisions, and keep your momentum going, you won't be successful as a business owner. McDonald's right now are doing all these, on the West Coast anyway, all these breakfast bowls. It's like egg whites with spinach and turkey sausage. They're having to reinvent because the Big Mac and all those sort of unhealthier foods, people are not as interested. There's a whole market out there of people looking for healthier foods. McDonald's could say, hey, we don't do that, or they could embrace change and try it and see what they can do. So little things like look at your programming. Has it changed in the last 5 years? Have you added new equipment? Give your gym or your facility a facelift. Like reinvest and reinvent in your gym. Like even just moving stuff around, getting a new squat rack, changing your dumbbells, adding new paint, right? It's so hard to run a business and just stay constant. The classic story is how Netflix just came in and just did a complete disruptive innovation to that industry and just put Blockbuster out of business. So the idea for this episode is that reinvention, don't be afraid of change, to the point where I don't even want you to be afraid of change. I want you to seek it out, right? Mike Boyle, as you guys know, Mike learns constantly and is constantly changing his mind and growing and improving as a professional. And he gets criticized for doing that, for changing too much. And I had a great line from Mike at a Perform Better conference a couple of years ago. It goes, yeah, I apologize. All this learning is really getting in the way of me stagnating as a professional. And I thought that was a great line. But we have to be the same, is that you have to seek out change, not just in terms of your programming, but also in terms of your coaching, also in terms of how you do business, how you build clients, how you collect money, etc., etc. So the lesson for this episode is reinvention. Don't be afraid of change. Seek it out. This is Alan Cosgrov from ResultsFitnessUniversity.com, and this is the Business of Fitness segment.
Hey everyone, as always, great to be back with you on the Strength Coach podcast. My name is Allistair McCaw of the McCaw Method. I'm a sports performance coach and author of the book 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach. Over the next few episodes here on the Strength Coach podcast, I'm going to be sharing with you what I feel are the 7 essential things that constitute a great coach. In each episode, I'm going to share with you a summary of each chapter in my book and go through some of the vital key points. After 20 years in the coaching industry, I felt it was time to share my experiences and ideas, not just on the coaching, but also the importance of investing in yourself every day through your habits and routines. I'm super excited to be sharing with you the 7 keys that I feel are going to raise your game and improve your coaching skills, systems, and most of all, your interpersonal skills. In today's episode, we're going to look at Chapter 1, and that is standards. As always, I like to say when I present at a coach's conference or workshop, it all starts with your standards. In the coaching world, I believe you will be defined by 2 things: the legacy you leave behind and the standards you keep as a coach and human being. When I think of these 2 things, my mind automatically goes to people like the legendary basketball coach John Wooden or former Manchester United football manager Sir Alex Ferguson. It's true what they say, that the standards you set are the standards and results you get. Standards are a foundation that are far superior to rules, as they define morally correct and acceptable behaviors. There are guidelines to live by and hold each other accountable. The standards you choose are central to how you will define your career and how your athletes will best remember you. These standards are the foundation of your program, a quality seal you put on your product, and that product is you. And it's you who gets to decide what those are. There are 3 standards I believe a coach should set: personal standards, the standards within their organization, academy, club, team, gym, whatever you may work in, and the standards for your athletes and clients. Let's first start with the first standard, and that is your personal standards. I believe to be a great coach or leader, it all starts with who you are and the way you choose to live your life. Your personal beliefs, your values, principles, habits, and the daily routines determine who you'll eventually become. As a coach, to demand the respect of your athletes and team, you first need to set the example. If you're the one who's telling them to be on time, work hard, and always be prepared, and you're not doing the same, how can you expect to get the buy-in and trust from that athlete or that team? Your athletes will see your example more than hear your words. Our second standard is those of your organization or the place you work out of, be it a gym or a training facility. These are for the staff or fellow coaches, maintenance team, front desk people, anyone who works at your facility. Setting standards within your working environment or organization can also be described as, this is the way we do things around here. There are 3 things that I feel matter most in building a successful organization. Number 1, finding the right people. Number 2, building a strong culture. And number 3, setting high standards. When you look at your organization, your standards and culture should be the foundation that everything else is built upon. These successful programs usually have someone at the top who believes in building a strong culture and positive environment who places an emphasis on high values and standards. Some examples of your standards within your organization could include dress code, time management, assisting other coaches, and the way you communicate. The third and final standard is those that you set for your athletes, your players, or your clients. Standards provide your athletes or clients with a responsibility and holds them accountable. It's a way for them to feel part of the process and at the same time contribute to a positive environment. Much like the standards for the coaches and the staff, it is vital for any successful program to have a set of standards in place for everybody. In other words, what is acceptable and what isn't, and what is expected of them. Many teams or organizations establish rules. However, rules by definition regulate what is and what isn't allowed. Too often, I feel coaches are in a rush to get out there and show their stuff. So, an example of some of the standards I set for my athletes include being on time, their body language, and no cell phones at practice, for example. So again, in summary, it all starts with your standards. All great coaches lead from their example, not just their words. All great organizations have high standards in place and work together to maintain and uphold these. And finally, a great coach places accountability on their athletes by not enforcing rules as such, but rather standards to uphold. Coaches, that's all from me today on today's episode of 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you the next chapter, and that will be on building your method and philosophy. For more information, get over to my website at McCawmethod.com. Until then, I'm Allistair McCaw, wishing you greatness today.
All right, now it's time for the Hit the Gym with a Strength Coach, and today I complete the Movement as Medicine interview trifecta. I have on one of the super trainers who is a licensed massage therapist, of course, and he's a certified functional strength coach, of course, teaches that as well. And more importantly, the new functional training for sports cover model, Marco Sanchez. Marco, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Sam, for having me. Been waiting a long time, so
all right.
Good.
You know, we had Kevin on actually last week Kevin Carr talking about the internship and the mentorships and all the different education you guys provide. You guys are doing a lot of education there, the two of you especially. And you've been, you were actually an intern in 2009, so you got your job at MBSC. We're talking to Kevin about how that's really where you guys find most of your staff. And now that you're there, you're basically an educator for Mike, for MBSC, for Mike and Bob, and you're heavily involved with training the staff, mostly also because you guys are jumping around. You're PRI, FMS, SFMA, NKT, Rock Tape. You're going to get all this education, FRC, and so you guys have kind of really making sure you're up to date with all the education and bringing it in to MBSC and Movement as Medicine, where you're the clinic director. So actually, Marco, let's start there, because I was even talking to Mike today about really how different exercises, different things come in, because we posted an article by Kevin about kind of that cross patterning and lateral movement and adding it into the warm up, and not that everything was completely new, but I know you guys are coming to Mike with a lot of this stuff, and I wanted him to kind of talk about how he picks or how he, how that process works. But I want to know, how does Movement as Medicine really exist within MBSC? Because it's really an anomaly, because I think there's so many, we talked about this earlier, there's a lot of mistrust in this industry. They're going to steal my clients, so you guys actually rent out of MBSC. You have your own business through there. So can you just give us a summary, an overview of how this all works?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like you said. When Kevin and Brendan first got the space next to Mike and Bob, and then just for a short time after they had brought me on, was right after MBSC had expanded. And I know Brendan talked about it in a previous episode that there was 1,000 square feet with these two little offices, and it was kind of like the most perfect setup we could have asked for. And, we pay Mike and Bob a monthly fee to have rent access to the space. And, we fill every day 10 to 15 clients a day easily between being on the floor at MBSC coaching groups and personal training clients to also being in the treatment room and in the clinic working on people who are, have an injury or movement dysfunction or whatever it may be.
And how does, you guys are getting pretty big now. Like I said to you before, it's not overnight, but you've been there since 2009. And you guys started this a couple of years ago. But you're getting pretty big. I mean, you're teaching all over the world. You guys have 25,000 Instagram followers. I was saying before, you don't have without any shirtless pictures, which is amazing. And how, there's that, you guys are getting, there's a lot of demand for you guys. So, how does that work? New clients come in. I want to work with Marco. How does that work with Mike and Bob and MBSC? And then also, when you guys want to grow, I guess that'll be the next question. When you guys want to grow and you want to start hiring some people, how does that work?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's important is that, we always make sure that we prioritize the gym first. Mike is the person who gave us jobs initially and is, I can say for me at least, I'm sure Kevin and Brendan, mentor numero uno for me is definitely Mike. I've learned more from him than anybody else. So even he's never, tried to impede my ability to develop myself as a personal brand or movement as medicine. I dedicate a lot of time to that, but I also always make sure, not just because it's respectful, but because it's my job and what I enjoy doing, is that my primary focus, just as much as movement as medicine, is MBSC in the gym. So just making sure that, I'm maintaining my client base. Mike and Bob incentivize us to hit a certain number of client sessions every week, and we're incentivized to bring clients in from the outside, and we're incentivized to move people into small groups, which actually works better for me. I do a lot more small group training than I do one-on-ones now, just because I can earn more money per hour. I can see and help more people. The gym makes more money, and it allows me to open up more hours to be in the clinic treating people. Ultimately, it's been a really good relationship because our goal is always to get people back to training. So we are fortunate enough to have this facility that cycles lots of athletes and regular general population clients in and out every day. And if somebody's hurting, fortunately for Kevin and I and Scott, who I'll talk about a little bit, and John Paloff, you got 4 options really, and 3 of them are movement as medicine. So we're lucky to see a lot of clients, and at the same time, I'm always doing my best to turn anybody who comes to movement as medicine from the outside into an MBSC client, because ultimately that is the goal. Because I don't want people to be movement as medicine clients for life, because that just means I'm not helping them get better. But I want them to be MBSC clients for life, because that means they're prioritizing their health and they're coming in and they're training and they're doing all the right things to actually keep them out of my office, which is what we try to do, is get people from pain and injury all the way back to training as quickly as possible and keep them over there so that these things don't come back.
And what about programming? Because, again, you guys do a lot of education on your own. Usually you guys are one of the first to do new courses. And when you come back, I know you guys test everything. You guys all work out, and you're always playing with stuff. What about when you're at odds with maybe because you're trying to get people better? That's the bottom line.
Right.
And I guess maybe you could still do that within the confines of movement as medicine and not on the MBSC floor. But, sometimes when you feel like, hey, have you guys kind of come into a conflict where you're like, wow, we really like to do this, but Mike doesn't love that, and what are we going to do?
We haven't really had anything like that, and Mike is very open to suggestions, and he's also very open to the fact that, we're the ones who are running some of this stuff by people 10, 12, 14 times a day. And, if a handful of us go to him and we're like, hey, we've been doing this with a lot of people and it works really well and we like it, can we add it to the program? He's very, very open to putting in new things and trying things and seeing how they work. I think one of the things that's important that anybody, not just Kevin or myself or Brendan, but anybody on staff, that Mike always reminds us to keep in mind when we're taking a course that what we're doing at MBSC is already really good. Obviously, it's really, really good because lots of people come here all the time. And what we need to do when we go out to take other courses and learn from other people is say, what can we add from this to our existing program to make it even better? So that's why our programming, a lot of it is made up of a culmination of lots of different courses that we've taken and lots of different really smart people that we've been fortunate enough to learn from. There's a little bit of PRI in some stuff. There's a little bit of FRC in some stuff. There's some FMS, obviously, we use as an assessment. Kevin and I use the SFMA as an assessment in the clinic. And so we've been able to not just go with all the great things that Mike has taught us, but also take bits and pieces of other people's programming or assessments and sort of add those all in to build what we kind of think is the super program. If there was a program out there that we thought was better, we'd be doing it. So we're always adapting and changing to new things that we learn, and Mike is very open to us experimenting and trying new things. They support our continuing education. We know that Mike is a huge fan of people getting continuing education, so it all works very well.
Absolutely. What about growth? I mean, I know you guys are trying to grow your business as large as possible, and there is going to be that time, that tipping point when it's like, wow, we have so many people coming into movement as medicine. Our demands at MBSC are high. You're also teaching for certified functional strength coach. So how does all that play in? Like when you, because I know you do a lot of business stuff. We were talking earlier before about some Gary Vee stuff. You're looking towards the future. Is there anything that you feel like you need to do to make sure that you grow at the right pace and make sure you maintain this relationship?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say like what's going to happen in the future of MBSC. When Mike and Bob are ready to retire, or if that. We don't know. We haven't really had those conversations yet, but we do know that like. It is really important for us to just continue to try to develop everything, because the more successful the gym becomes, even though, we don't have ownership in the gym, the more successful the gym becomes really plays into how successful movement as medicine becomes. Ideally, we become a humongous facility with more therapists and more coaches and still delivering the same quality product. But, we're always trying to bring in more people and reach more lives and expand on the education stuff. I think that to say that you would be satisfied at any point in time would be selling yourself short of anything that you could possibly reach.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Marco, what have you guys done lately, or just even you, continuing education-wise, that you're kind of maybe playing around with right now? Is there anything that you've done lately that you feel like maybe not the next big thing, but talk to me about some stuff that you've been doing over the maybe last 6 months.
Well, I have been focused a lot on the hands-on side of stuff. Like I've been spending a lot of time trying to learn some more alternative forms of massage therapy stuff. Like I've been exploring shiatsu a little bit more, and I've been exploring acupressure point, things like that. But one thing that we've really gotten into that is kind of more relatable, that will give people something to sort of think about and talk about, is the fact that we have started for the first time at MBSC a movement as medicine operated movement recovery class. So we now are doing a 1-hour session once a week on Fridays, where it's there's really no training. I mean, it is training if you think about it, but there's no strength work. There's really just an entire hour of working on joint mobility, flexibility, and stability. Really is just trying to help people get a larger movement index, trying to help people to explore joint ranges of motion and tissue extensibility that they may have never explored before, or that they might not have known that they had, or help them find some new end ranges and help them learn how to stabilize themselves at these end ranges so that we can help people recover better. And it's really been our pro athletes who are the ones who have really taken advantage of it. They've been coming in on Fridays at 10 a.m. And then, Jim Ward and a couple of the other diehards MBSC fans have been coming into the class, but it's growing every week, and it's been really awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Now, what in terms of that class? Has it been something that you guys have thought like, man, we need because look, people forget when you have a product, you always want consumption. You don't want that person to sign up and not come. That's not going to do you any good. You want the consumption. You want to come up with more stuff that they can do to get them in your gym, to be part of it, to be part of that community. Is this something you guys been kind of thinking about for a while and trying to figure out how you can do it? And is it something that you feel like is going to be probably a class every day eventually that, somebody can go to?
Yeah, well, that's funny that you asked because, somebody asked me on Facebook the other day after I had posted on Instagram a video, of a few clips from the class, and somebody asked me, has the class been successful? And I thought about it for a second, and I responded by saying, well, how do you define success? Because for us, it's been successful in terms of we've had a good showing every week of 10 to 15, professional hockey players and a handful of our other regular clients and college athletes. It's been successful there. We've helped them to move better and explore ranges that they didn't know that they had and get ready and recover over the weekend better. It's been successful there. Has it necessarily been hugely profitable? No. But it's how you measure your success. For me, I responded by saying, I'm very happy if it stays where it is because trust me, if I got into this industry to make money, it wouldn't be, by trying to make movement classes. I would be, like you said, doing fancy stuff on the internet and trying to sell things and things like that. But really the goal was how can we continue to provide even more of a product to people? How can we continue to take it to the next level? So one of the other things along with the movement classes, we just got set up with this app, Coach Me Plus. I don't know if you've heard of it, but a bunch of professional and collegiate settings are using it, and we're really just getting started. I couldn't even really tell you anything about it other than the fact that Kevin, Ken, and I had a 1-hour sort of conference call with one of their guys who showed us how to use it, and that we've uploaded a bunch of the athletes' profiles to it. But I need to sit down over the rest of the week and sort of figure out what we're going to do with it now and how we're going to use it. So I'm really not into doing anything for a profit as much as I am how can we continue to develop this product and offer people something better and more every time.
And it's funny because I think this is the kind of class that might be hard to get people to start, but then it's something that they're not going to want to leave. Because I know I did a couple things here with my golfers that they were just like, oh man, this is excellent. Because sometimes they don't want to just come in and kill themselves or try to work out or feel that piece of, oh man, I got to, not that they're feeling guilty about not working hard, but if they're playing later that afternoon, they could still get a workout in. But a lot of people really, for me, again, my demographic is 50 to 83, is they respond to some of this stuff. Have you found that it was a little harder to get them in, but now they're just loving it when they're there?
Yeah, no, that's definitely been it. And in terms of people who maybe haven't necessarily been to Movement as Medicine as a client before, and then coming over to the class and sort of recognizing that there's a whole world of movement exploration that we can go through that they may have never thought about or never even seen before. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, there's a lot of untapped potential here in terms of my movement index. And then they see, they yield some immediate benefits, and then they start to really buy in, which is good.
Absolutely. Well, let's expand on that because you did a post on improving cervical rotation, and I swear it wasn't because I knew I was interviewing you that I woke up with a stiff neck today. I really did, and it was killing me. I thought I was going to get run over before because I couldn't turn my neck to see the cars. I was going through an intersection. I'm turning my whole body. You posted a nice little sequence, which you guys have done a great job of doing. We're going to talk about your stability WOD series you guys did, again, with sequences. And you posted a nice little sequence. And, like you said in the post, the neck is so tricky. And I've always been afraid to even kind of go near that. And I need it with my golfers because it's an important part of the swing to have that that rotational mobility there with in the cervical for cervical rotation. Talk to us about these drills that you used. Just go over the sequence and what they're doing, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, sure. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I've always been someone who you always want to err on the side of caution. Like, when you're working with the neck, like that's something that Mike taught me very early on, which is why I don't know if you go back and you look at the post, you can see where I emphasize certain things, like in all caps, like no pain, and also very gently, because like I said, like some of this stuff, it can be very, very tricky. The neck is a super complicated area, and we want to always make sure that we're paying strong attention there. But in the post, basically, I just went through a little sequence that I've been doing with a lot of people who have been coming in, and whatever their issue might be, if cervical movement is an issue at all, like I always want to try to clear that up. So I might apply a soft tissue intervention to their neck first, like I'll do some manual work, and what I want to do after that is I'll assess cervical rotation, and if it's lacking, basically I want to see if people can clear their chin out over their clavicle, and I might just do a suitcase-loaded neck stretch where I'll just have someone go tall kneeling, hold a nice kettlebell in one side, laterally flex the neck away so that they can get a nice big stretch, allow them to go through some head and neck turning there, holding that kettlebell on the same side, and probably do both sides. But then the temple rolling is something that I got from Scotty, which is like one of the things that we've learned a lot about mobility is that in order to tap into some of this mobility that might be lacking is that there needs to be a demand for a little bit of stability. So if I just loosely turn my head and neck in the air, I might have a certain end range there. And then if I go ahead and I place my forehead onto the ground and I roll from temple to temple and apply just a light pressure down into the pad, then I've stressed the demand for some stability. That's going to allow me, in most cases, to tap into some more movement there. And so this is, like I said, something I've been doing with a lot of people who have been coming in, and most people who come in present themselves with lack of cervical flexion, lack of cervical rotation, and that's something that I always want to try to clear up right away, because one thing we try to get people to eventually is multi-segmental rolling if it's something that needs to be cleared up. And if they lack cervical movement, then you can't even begin to get the rolling going. So,
Marco, can you just go over, just for a lot of people that might not understand or, haven't done a lot of the assessment for that, just give us a basic overview of, because you're like, okay, is it symmetrical? Does it feel tight? Which, a lot of people might feel. People, especially I feel like the neck are kind of like the calves sometimes. Like people won't even complain about them because they don't even know, because they haven't really tried to rotate. Some people, certain, clients, So talk to us about everything that you're looking for in that assessment.
Yeah. And one of the other things, too, is like stiff becomes the homeostasis for so many people that they like no longer recognize that they're stiff if it doesn't hurt. That's just how they are. So one thing I always want to do is like when I'm assessing cervical movement is I'm just making sure that there's no compensatory movement anywhere else at the spine. So can they rotate without extending and rotating the thoracic spine back at the same time? Or, can they touch their chin to their chest with their mouth closed? If they have to open their teeth to reach, then there's probably some sort of cervical flexion dysfunction there. Same thing when they're going back into extension. If they dip their head and neck all the way back to look at the ceiling, but their mouth instantly opens up, or they tell you that they feel a pinch or a tightness in the back, then there's definitely some sort of dysfunction there. So I'm always just looking to see it's like what we're doing during the FMS. Like, can you show me that you have integrity in a certain place while you bring another certain place or joint through a range of motion? So that's really what I'm always looking for.
Okay, good stuff. I want to move on to that stability WOD series, because I think you guys make a good point, and that for anybody, I'll have a link to that series. You can go to Movement is Medicine. to their blog, but I'll have links to that. And you guys say in the post, trainers on the mobility bandwagon who are uncertain of what to do next. How do you integrate the new ranges of motion? I've gained X mobility into my training, so that keeps, how does the brain keep it? And I think this is the next part is me. I think I end up dumbing down this part. Like, it's not as easy as mobilizing your hip then squatting, like right after. It's not that simple where sometimes I kind of, like I said, I feel like I dumb that piece down. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to give them mobility, foam, roll it, stretch, and then, get it into that range of motion. But it really isn't as simple as that. Can you kind of give us the guidelines for this? Tell us a little bit about this series and tell us about, some of the guidelines that you guys look at when you're doing this type of motor learning.
Yeah, so it's similar to just how we program our basic strength work. Is that we consider the brain and the body needing 2 to 3 weeks of consistent success at something before we consider it ready to progress to the next thing. So, like you said, it's not as simple as someone coming in. There's no toe touch. Okay, maybe I apply a couple interventions, some soft tissue interventions, and a couple mobility drills, and then all of a sudden they have their toe touch. Well, that person's still not necessarily safe to go deadlift something heavy yet. Obviously, that's the end goal, and that's how I'm going to build stability on the end of that toe touch so that they keep that mobility and flexibility that I want. But we like to consider breaking things down into phases and considering 2 to 3 weeks of consistent success. So, for example, we'll keep going with the toe touch. If someone comes in and they are not successful with the toe touch, ultimately my number one goal is to get that person to deadlift. So this is where we kind of take a Charlie approach where it's like, okay, that person's deadlift today might be them going and working on the soft tissue work that they need to do and their toe touching progressions that they need to do. That's their form of deadlifting for today. And it's also important to remember that if this person's paying you for fitness, that you have to apply a fitness intervention also. So I can't just have a team of 20 hockey players and let 19 of them go deadlift and then make little Johnny go work on toe touches in the corner. I got to give Johnny a heavy dumbbell and tell him to go goblet squat or go split squat or do something that all the prerequisites are there for, because Johnny's there to train and his parents are there to train. They're not there for toe touches, but I know that's important, so I got to make sure that I do that. So, like using the toe touch example, 2 to 3 weeks of consistent success, meaning that person is coming in now. They don't necessarily have to go through all the interventions. They can wake up in the morning and touch their toes pretty clean. And I've probably been progressing that person through some hinging along the way. And then it might be time to then start loading them up with a kettlebell or getting them into some form of deadlifting. But we do like to consider 2 to 3 weeks of consistent success at each phase, whatever that phase may be, before we allow someone to kind of progress on to the next thing. Because like you said, it's not as black and white as, hey, let's go mobilize your hip a little bit. Okay, great. Now we're ready. Let's go squat. Not in every case, at least.
Yeah. So when you say you'll kind of, that'll be their form of deadlifting that day, will you kind of say, okay, we're going to pair, an upper body push with these, this is your form of deadlifting. So kind of pair that with that, do a core exercise, almost like use it as the triset for that without, because you're still doing some other things. Like you said with Charlie, he's always like, do what they can do too. Don't just sit there and that's going to be my next topic into this idea about, going too much into the PT realm. But is that what you'll do? Will you pair them up with an upper body from that perspective and try in like a tricep type thing?
Yeah, well, we do, typically we pair deadlifts with chin-ups on day one, but I also got to make sure I do whatever I can. Whatever they can do in terms of a lower body bilateral lift, I'm going to do my best to match what they can't do, right? So, for example, if that person can't deadlift, I'm going to work on whatever interventions I need to apply to get them to deadlifting, but I'm also going to have them doing some form of squatting if they're safe to squat. If they're not safe to squat, it might be doing shoulders elevated bench hip lift. It might be doing, rear foot elevated split squat, but some form of lower body. I'm going to get as close to what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. Great. Now, this is a really good question for you because, and for Movement as Medicine guys, because we've had this discussion on Strength Coach. It's even on one of our top forum posts about, there was a big discussion. I've asked a lot of different coaches on the podcast about this idea about, are we getting too much information from physical therapists? Are we doing too much corrective exercise? Are strength coaches becoming too much, trying to do too much in that realm? What are your thoughts on this, especially with somebody who can put your hands on people? You're a licensed massage therapist. You've done a lot, like I said, a lot of different courses that the average strength coach or personal trainer cannot take because they're not allowed to manipulate people. Talk to us about your take on this idea.
Yeah. Well, one, it's tough because I live in a bubble. Like, I live in a bubble here where everybody, for the most part, everybody does what they're supposed to do really, really well all the time. So I'm really fortunate that's the case. However, like you mentioned, there's a fine line of what is in your scope of practice versus what is not. And I do think that people have gotten a little bit trigger happy with doing, like, quote unquote corrective exercises. And, if a corrective exercise, people throwing corrective exercises out there for the sake of doing corrective exercises without really knowing why they're putting them in there or what exactly that's for, like, what's the goal here? Or is this even improving? Because if it's not improving, then it's not a corrective exercise anymore. If it's not working and it's not the appropriate intervention. And I'm guilty of that just as much as anybody else, as a young strength coach especially, just, hey, I know this is important because I see lots of people doing it, so we should probably do it every day, without really having the knowledge or the skill set to look a little bit deeper and say, okay, I was having you do that. It definitely didn't hurt, but it wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the right answer, and we're going to do this instead because I figured it out. But I think what's really, really important is that people are just very aware of what their scope of practice is. Like you said, like for Kevin and I, we are allowed to apply soft tissue intervention, and we are allowed to put our hands on people in certain ways. We're not allowed to manipulate joints. We are not allowed to do chiropractic adjustment. And it's important that you have a referral network of people who you trust, who live under the same umbrella as you so that you can speak the same language. It's why we're fortunate that we have John Paloff here, who, I've been, for as long as I've been at MBSC, John's been here, and he's been here longer than I have. So he understands when I go to him and I say, hey, this person has trouble with this movement pattern as well as this exercise, he knows exactly what exercise I'm talking about because he's been here forever, So we're very fortunate to have that, and I think that's one thing that the functional movement systems has done a really good job, is created a network of people who can have different disciplines but speak the same language. And, there's definitely people are like, oh, FMS this, FMS that, you can poke so many holes in it. Whether you can or you can't, I don't know of a better system that allows people to communicate on the same terms, for a personal trainer, to a physical therapist, to an athletic therapist, and any other discipline that you could throw in there. So I think that just having a strong referral network of people who you trust who practice like you do is the best thing that you could possibly do. Absolutely.
Marco, you guys have done a lot of traveling, teaching the certified functional strength coach, doing some, we're talking to Kevin about last episode about some of the mentorships, even the traveling mentorships. Give us some stuff out that you're kind of seeing with trainers that they need to do better. You guys have followed such a great path, getting degrees in the industry, and then interning at great places, continuing your continuing your education, and staying in the trenches and staying true. What are some things that you'd like to see? I mean, because again, you guys see so many newer trainers and older trainers that you guys see them all with certified functional strength coach and some of the mentorships and internships. Give us some your thoughts on the state of the industry and where you'd like to see some trainers put a little more thought into.
I think one of the things that's really good is the the fact that we live in the internet era and like the wave of internet that's happening is that people are doing a really, really good job, I think, of obviously having access to information. And I think a lot of the good information is starting to, it's not all the way there, but I think a lot of the really good information is starting to filter itself out. So people really kind of know, like, hey, these guys are doing this and they're having a lot of success with it. I'm not referring to us. I'm just referring to people in general. Versus, like, who, is sort of doing this and is gimmicky or is selling things or is on TV or whatever it might be. So I think that, people staying active and vocal on different forms of social media is really, really good because, like I said, there's so much information out there. And I really like that. I feel like the industry is starting to take a turn away from this idea of, like, let's bombard people with insane workouts that they can barely manage that want to make them throw up. And I feel like it's starting to take a turn more towards the, like, let's remember it's our job to manage the health and wellness of these people and provide them with something that's going to be sustainable and help them with longevity. With that being said, there'll always be crap, but I think that we're very fortunate to start to see the turn, like where the tide is starting to roll. And I think, like, obviously I'm biased because I teach for the CFSC, but the fact of the matter is, like, I've had so many of these courses where younger or inexperienced coaches have said things to me like, that was, the best course I've ever taken, and now I feel very strongly about my ability to manage someone's health and wellness. I feel very strongly about my ability to select the right exercises for someone. I feel very strongly about my ability to apply the appropriate interventions for this person's restrictions. So I would, our goal was to raise the industry standard with the CFSC, and I think that that's what's happening. And I'm not just pumping its tires because I teach for it, but because I truly believe in what we're doing. And if I didn't, I wouldn't do it. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I do. I tend to be more on the positive side, but I do think we're seeing more of the good stuff float to the top.
Right.
So I really believe that, and I think the more. And I was kidding before about you guys having 25,000 followers without with your shirts on. I mean, you do have 25,000 followers, but there's something.
If we took our shirts off, we'd probably lose some followers.
12.5, I think.
A lot of ice cream over here.
A lot of ice cream. It's true. You guys do post a lot of ice cream stuff. Ice cream world tours. You've done a lot of education for MBSC, CSFC. What about movement as medicine? Do you guys have anything coming up that, from your company?
Yeah, we're working on something. It's kind of a project that I've been working on this summer. And I don't want to say I don't want to not that it's like a big secret, but I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to mislead people in case I end up changing things or whatever. But I'm trying to create an outline for something that will help people to manage the more complicated client, someone whose scope of practice is only personal training or strength coach, and what sort of things that they can do with their certification or with their scope of practice that will help people to even just get back to baseline. If we consider like the CFSC the baseline of training people, like how can we get people who might even be below that or away from that up to par so that we can begin to apply the CFSC type programming that we want to apply for them.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what a lot of what a lot of us are looking for at the same time, and I think we haven't really found that as much. The closest thing would be obviously the functional movement screen where some of the correctives, and I think you guys did a great job already just with something like the Stability Wide series that you did. But that's awesome. We'll be looking for that, and I'll remind everybody we're gonna have links on strengthcoachpodcast.com for all of the Movement as Medicine social media and their blog, etc. So, Marco, thanks so much for coming on today, spending some time completing the Movement as Medicine interview trifecta.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Hello, welcome to the Functional Movement Systems segment of the Strength Coach Podcast. My name is Brett Jones. In part one, we talked about the history of Indian clubs and Indian club swinging. For part two, I'd like to go into a little bit of the application. Why do we do this? And maybe a little bit of how we incorporate this into our current training. As we talked about before, Indian clubs have a very long history. There's different schools or traditions within Indian club swinging. Everything from Czechoslovakian to Burma to India, just all over the place. In fact, they were still in the Army Physical Training Manual up until 1980. Nobody knew how to use them, but they were in the manual. They've been part of the culture for a long time, although we've lost the tool, the methods that go with the tool. So why do we swing Indian clubs? Almost what comes to my mind first is what Dr. Thomas simply referred to as brain training. You can call it neuro training, motor skill and coordination. We're crossing midline. We work on opposing patterns where we're doing something different with each arm. We work on symmetrical patterns where we're performing the same pattern with each arm. And we do alternating patterns where one arm gets to follow the other into the pattern. So from just a general movement concept, those are all very powerful things. When we're working on motor skill and coordination, there's arguments for crossing midline. There's ways that doing opposing patterns and symmetrical patterns and alternating patterns, all of those light up a lot of neural space and give us a lot of opportunity to learn. And then you add in things like footwork. So we can perform different squatting, stepping, footwork patterns, and now we've got maybe an upper body symmetrical pattern being performed while I'm stepping into a lunge. And then returning to my starting position. So in the end, the Indian club swing can be very flowing, very athletic, very beautiful. Actually, an Olympic contested event at two different times, early 1900s and then 1932. It was 1932 or 36, I believe. It was actually part of the Olympics, and that was 3-pound clubs for 3 minutes. So it was more of think rhythmic gymnastics where you're doing an improvised routine for a period of time. But the Indian club swinging was actually in the Olympics. Specifically, we think more about Indian club swinging in reference to the shoulder, obviously because we're holding it in our hand and swinging it in different patterns. Our shoulder gets very involved in what's happening during our Indian club swinging. Thinking about the shoulder within Indian club swinging, I think of an integrated, mobile, and efficient shoulder. I want to integrate the shoulder into my movements, which means having great breathing, having a T-spine that moves well, having scapula that know how to, like we say, refer to as sticky. They stay where they're supposed to. They rotate as they're supposed to. They do the things they need to support that glenohumeral motion. So we integrate the shoulder into these patterns, which helps us generate mobility at the shoulder, which helps us have an efficient shoulder that can move with some speed and power. Indian club swinging traditionally, as Dr. Thomas will say, everyone started light. 1 to 3 pound clubs. And for most people, 1 to 2 pound clubs is plenty. 1 pound clubs being my favorite. By the time you're performing some of these circular patterns with the clubs, 1 pound weighs way more than 1 pound. And so we get some centrifugal force going, and the numbers add up. And it's fun. I do enough heavy in my training. I didn't need another form of heavy. I needed a restorative art that was going to allow me to have an integrated, mobile, efficient shoulder. that was going to allow me to do some neural training, motor skill coordination training. That's what I was looking for. When we do Indian club swinging, we look more at what Dr. Thomas calls the pillars of rational training, being progression, variety, and precision. Progression is a learning curve. When you first pick up your Indian clubs, you have begun the journey of learning how to swing clubs. For each of the movements, there's a high skill point to reach. And the journey from the first swing to gaining high skill, that's progression. Where are you on that curve? Some of us are on a very slow curve, very slow slope. Some of us are on a very rapid slope. We pick these things up very quickly. We use variety, meaning drills to enhance skill acquisition, not just variety for variety's sake. If I notice that a client is having trouble learning a particular move, I may take that pattern to tall kneeling. I may take it to one leg. I may incorporate a T-spine mobility drill in order to help them with that particular piece of the Indian club swinging puzzle. So the variety are drills to enhance skill acquisition. Precision is perhaps the thing we've lost most as time has gone by. Right where your wrist is, how your grip works, if you're returning to the proper grip, where's your elbow? Are you drawing smaller circles inside the larger circles of your Indian club patterns? There are specific things that we're looking for. Now, we build these over time with reality. We're not going to go after anybody and demand that the Indian club swing is perfect before they move on to other things. We are going to build that progression ramp, use those drills to enhance skill acquisition via variety. And we're going to ask over time that there's a precision to what we're doing. I see a lot of club swinging on the interwebs and YouTubes, and there's aspects of the precision that have certainly been lost over time. We'll be looking for those as time goes by. Incorporating Indian clubs into your own program, Club Swinging Essentials, is a manual and DVD that will walk you through the basic Indian club patterns. We have a new Indian club instructional videos from FMS that have been shot recently. They actually come now as a download with your Indian club purchase. So we here at FMS, and me as an individual practitioner, certainly I believe strongly in Indian club swinging. I think it's tremendous fun. I think it's very effective for brain training, for the shoulder, being integrated, mobile, efficient, for just having something restorative that helps my clients move better, feel better. It's a neat tool to look at. So I look forward to being with you next time on the Strength Coach podcast. And in the meantime, keep swinging.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 189 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Special thanks to Chris Pryor, Aaron McGurr, and the folks over at Perform Better. You can check them out at performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Marco Sanchez for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength conditioning and performance enhancement. Alan Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Brett Jones and Functional Movement Systems. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. And of course, remember you can join strengthcoach.com and have access to the site for just $1, 3 days, just $1. Give us a try. You'll see how great the forum is. It's the best place to have access to Coach Boyle. Get some great coaches on the forum answering questions all the time. It's $1, 3 days. You don't want to stay with us, just cancel your membership. You don't pay another penny. But if you do, we have a monthly fee of $14.95, or take the better option, $129 for the year. Access that offer. Go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. My name is Anthony Renner. You can reach me at strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.